The rope burn across Katherine Kennedy's palms split open again as she hauled the fence post into position, blood mixing with dirt and sweat in the late afternoon sun of Weaverville, California. It was 1878, and the summer heat bore down on her like a physical weight, but she would not stop. Could not stop. The ranch her father built before consumption took him 3 months ago depended on these fences being finished before winter, and there was no one else to do it. "Look at her," came a voice from the road, dripping with disgust. Katherine did not need to turn around to know it was Margaret Whitmore, the banker's wife, probably on her way back from town with her weekly gossip ammunition. Working like a common field hand. It is disgraceful. A woman her age should be married, keeping house, not out here playing at being a man. Katherine's jaw clenched, but she kept working. She had heard worse in the 3 months since her father died. The whispers in church. The way shopkeepers looked at her with pity mixed with contempt. The suggestions from well-meaning neighbors that she should sell the ranch and move to San Francisco to find work as a seamstress or governess. As if she could abandon everything her father worked for, everything he taught her. "She will never find a husband now," Margaret continued to her companion. "What man wants a wife with hands like that, calloused and rough as leather? It is unnatural." The post finally settled into the hole Katherine had dug, and she began shoveling dirt around its base, her shoulders burning with the effort. She was 22 years old, and she had been working this ranch alongside her father since she was tall enough to hold a shovel. He never had sons, and he never treated her like she was less capable because of it. He taught her to rope, to brand, to mend fences, to break horses. He taught her that honest work was nothing to be ashamed of, no matter who was doing it. But the rest of Weaverville did not see it that way. The sun was setting by the time she finished the fence line, painting the surrounding mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Katherine wiped her forehead with her sleeve and surveyed her work with grim satisfaction. 60 feet of new fencing, strong and straight. Her father would have been proud. The thought brought the familiar ache to her chest, the one that never quite went away. She was leading her horse back to the barn when she heard the sound of hooves on the road. Not the leisurely pace of townspeople heading home, but the purposeful rhythm of someone who knew how to ride. Katherine's hand instinctively went to the rifle strapped to her saddle. She had learned to be cautious since her father died. A woman alone on a ranch was vulnerable in ways that made her stomach turn, but the rider who came into view was not what she expected. He sat tall in the saddle, a rangy man in his mid-20s with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that curled slightly under his hat. He rode with the easy confidence of someone who had spent more of his life on horseback than on foot. As he drew closer, she could see his face was lean and weathered, with clear gray eyes that took in everything with a quick, assessing glance. "Evening," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was rough around the edges like he did not use it often. "Name's Samuel Quinton. I heard in town you might be looking for a hand." Katherine stared at him, surprised. "Who told you that?" "Man at the general store. Said the Kennedy ranch was being worked by one person and could use help." He looked around at the ranch, taking in the neat barn, the corrals, the newly mended fence. "Looks like you have been managing, but he said it is a lot of land for one person." "I can handle it," Katherine said automatically, the defensive edge creeping into her voice. She had heard too many variations of that sentiment lately, always with the unspoken implication that she was failing, that she was in over her head. Samuel just nodded, his expression neutral. "I am sure you can, but winter is coming, and there is always more work than daylight this time of year. I am good with horses, good with cattle, and I can mend just about anything. I am not looking for much, just fair wages and a place in the bunkhouse." Katherine wanted to say yes. God, how she wanted to say yes. Her body ached constantly from dawn to dusk work, and there were 100 tasks she had been putting off because there simply were not enough hours in the day. But hiring a hand meant money, and money was the one thing she did not have much of. The ranch was solvent, but barely. Her father's medical bills had eaten through most of their savings. "I cannot afford to pay much," she said finally, hating the admission. "What can you afford?" She named a figure that was embarrassingly low, less than half what a ranch hand typically made. Samuel was quiet for a moment, and she braced herself for him to tip his hat and ride away. Instead, he said, "That will work for now. When you sell your cattle in the fall, if there is profit, you can make up the difference then." Katherine blinked. "You would take that risk?" "I have been riding for 3 weeks looking for work," Samuel said simply. "Everywhere is either not hiring or wants experienced cattle drivers for the big ranches. I am good at ranch work, but I do not have those kind of credentials. You need help, I need work. Seems like we can help each other out." There was no pity in his voice, no condescension. He was stating facts, offering a solution. Katherine found herself nodding before she fully thought it through. "All right," she said. "Bunkhouse is clean, needs airing out, but it is sound. You can start tomorrow at dawn." Samuel dismounted, and she realized he was tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscled build of someone who had worked hard his whole life. He extended his hand, and after a moment, Katherine shook it. His grip was firm and brief, and he did not react to her calloused palm the way most people did. "Thank you, Miss Kennedy," he said. "I will earn my keep, I promise you that." She showed him to the bunkhouse, a small building behind the main barn that had housed ranch hands back when her father could afford to keep a full crew. It was dusty from disuse, but dry and solid. Samuel looked around and nodded his approval. "This will do fine," he said. "I will get settled and see you in the morning." Katherine walked back to the main house as twilight deepened into night. For the first time in months, she felt a small flutter of something that might have been hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could make this work. Samuel was waiting by the barn when she emerged the next morning, hat in hand. The sun was barely touching the horizon, and the air still held the cool bite of night. He looked alert and ready, and Katherine felt a stab of guilt that she had slept later than usual, her exhausted body taking advantage of the fact that she did not have to do everything alone today. "Morning," she said, trying to shake off the grogginess. "There is coffee in the house if you want some." "Already had some, thank you," Samuel said. "Where do you want me to start?" Katherine had lain awake the night before making a mental list of priorities. "The north pasture fence needs checking. There is a section that has been giving me trouble. After that, if there is time, the barn roof has a leak that needs patching before the rains come." Samuel nodded and headed out without further discussion. Katherine watched him go, then turned to her own tasks. She had the horses to tend, the chickens to feed, and she wanted to ride out to check on the small herd of cattle in the east pasture. The day passed in a blur of work, and it was not until late afternoon that she saw Samuel again. She was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when he appeared in the doorway. "North fence is mended," he said. "Found a few more weak spots and reinforced them. Started on the barn roof, but I will need to finish tomorrow, losing the light." Katherine straightened, pushing her hair back from her face. "That is good, thank you." Samuel hesitated, then said, "You have a nice spread here. Your father built something solid." The unexpected kindness in his words made Katherine's throat tighten. "He did," she managed. "He worked his whole life for this place." "I can see that," Samuel said. "Get some rest, Miss Kennedy. You look like you have been running on empty for a while." He left before she could respond, and Katherine found herself blinking back unexpected tears. It had been so long since anyone had shown her simple kindness without judgment attached to it. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Samuel proved to be as good as his word. He worked from dawn to dusk without complaint, tackling the endless list of tasks that had been piling up. He was quiet, speaking only when necessary, but his presence was steady and reliable. Katherine found herself relaxing in increments, the constant knot of anxiety in her stomach slowly loosening. It was 2 weeks after Samuel arrived that the trouble started. Katherine was in town, buying supplies, when she overheard the conversation. She was in the back of the general store, comparing prices on nails, when Margaret Whitmore's voice carried clearly from the front. "I am telling you, it is scandalous. A young woman alone on that ranch with a strange man. No chaperone, no propriety. It is disgusting." "Maybe he is just working there," offered another voice, less certain. "Do not be naive, Helen. Everyone knows what is really going on. She could not find a husband the normal way, so she has resorted to this. Living in sin, working like a man, it is all part of the same degradation." Katherine's hands clenched around the box of nails until the cardboard bent. She wanted to march to the front of the store and tell Margaret Whitmore exactly what she thought of her vicious gossip. But she had learned that defending herself only made things worse. People believed what they wanted to believe. She paid for her supplies and left without making eye contact with anyone. But the damage was done. By the time she got back to the ranch, her insides were churning with anger and shame. She hated that the gossip got to her. Hated that she cared what small-minded people thought. But the words burrowed under her skin like splinters. Samuel was in the corral, working with one of the younger horses. He looked up as she drove the wagon past, and something in her expression must have shown because he secured the horse and walked over. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing," Katherine said, climbing down from the wagon. "Just town gossip. It is fine." "It is not fine if it has you looking like that," Samuel said. His gray eyes were steady on her face. "What are they saying?" Katherine laughed, but it came out bitter. "What do you think they are saying? A woman and a man alone on a ranch. Use your imagination." Samuel's jaw tightened. "You want me to leave?" "What? No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "No, I need your help. I cannot run this place alone, and you have been." She stopped, searching for words. "You have been a godsend, honestly. I just hate that people are making it into something dirty." "People always talk," Samuel said quietly, "especially about things they do not understand." He hesitated, then added, "For what it is worth, I have worked a lot of ranches. I have never seen anyone work as hard as you do, man or woman." Katherine looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." "I mean it," Samuel said. "You are stronger than most men I have ever known, not just physically, though you can hold your own there too. But the way you keep going day after day, no matter what anyone says, that takes real strength." The words hit Katherine like a physical thing, warming something deep inside her that had been cold for a long time. No one had acknowledged what she was doing, not really. They pitied her or scorned her or suggested she give up, but no one had looked at her effort and seen it as strength. "I do not feel strong," she admitted. "Most days I feel like I am barely holding on." "That is what makes it strength," Samuel said, "doing it anyway." They stood there in the afternoon sun, and something shifted between them. It was subtle, like the change in the air before a storm, but Katherine felt it in her bones. She looked at Samuel, really looked at him, and saw not just the hired hand who had shown up 2 weeks ago, but a man who saw her, who respected her, who did not need her to be anything other than what she was. "I should get these supplies put away," she said finally, suddenly shy. "I will help," Samuel said, and together they unloaded the wagon. The weeks passed, and fall began to paint the landscape in golds and russets. The work continued, but now it felt different. Samuel and Katherine worked side by side, their movements developing the unconscious coordination of people who understood each other. He anticipated what she needed, and she learned to read his silences. They talked more, too. Small conversations at first, shared over meals or while working. Samuel told her about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about losing both his parents to fever when he was 17, about the years of drifting from job to job, never quite finding a place that felt like home. Katherine told him about her father, about learning to ride before she could read, about the way her mother died when she was 10, and how her father never remarried, pouring all his love and energy into her and the ranch. He used to say that the land does not care if you are a man or a woman, Katherine said one evening. They were sitting on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the mountains. It had become a habit, this quiet time at the end of the day. It only cares if you are willing to work it and respect it. Smart man, Samuel said. Most people get too caught up in what things should be to see what they actually are. Is that why you did not blink when I hired you? Katherine asked. Because most men would not want to work for a woman. Samuel was quiet for a moment. My mother ran our farm after my father died, he said finally. She was not much older than you are now. I watched people treat her like she was crazy or incapable, watched them try to cheat her because they thought she did not know better. But she knew every inch of that land, every animal, every crop. She taught me that capability has nothing to do with whether you are wearing pants or a skirt. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was, Samuel said, and the loss in his voice was old but still tender. You remind me of her sometimes. That same determination, that refusal to be less than you are just because someone else is uncomfortable with it. Katherine felt her cheeks warm, grateful for the gathering darkness that hid her blush. I am not trying to be difficult, she said. I just want to keep my father's legacy alive. You are not difficult, Samuel said, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him. You are remarkable. Their eyes met, and Katherine's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, full of things unspoken. Samuel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair back from her face. His fingers were warm against her cheek. Katherine, he said softly, and hearing her first name in his rough voice sent a shiver down her spine. I know I am just a hired hand. I know I have no right, but I need you to know that I think you are the most extraordinary woman I have ever met. Samuel, she whispered, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might bolt. But Katherine leaned into it, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palm. The kiss deepened, and she felt something inside her unfurl, something she had kept locked away for so long she had almost forgotten it existed. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. I am sorry, he said. I should not have done that. Do not apologize, Katherine said fiercely. Do not you dare apologize. I just do not want you to think I have expectations. That I am taking advantage. Katherine pulled back enough to look him in the eye. Samuel Quinton, if you think I can be taken advantage of, you have not been paying attention. I kissed you back because I wanted to, because I have been wanting to for weeks now. A slow smile spread across Samuel's face, transforming it. You have? Yes, Katherine said, feeling bold. Have you not noticed the way I keep finding excuses to work near you, the way I make extra coffee in the mornings? I have been half in love with you since you looked at my calloused hands and did not flinch. I have been in love with you since you told me you could not afford to pay me much and looked like you would rather die than admit it, Samuel said. You were so proud, so determined. I wanted to help you succeed more than I have wanted anything in my life. They kissed again, And this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. Katherine felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, like something fundamental had shifted in the world and she would never be the same. "What do we do now?" she asked when they finally came up for air. "I do not know," Samuel admitted. "I do not have much to offer you. No land, no money, just my own 2 hands and a willingness to work." "That is more than enough," Katherine said. "This ranch needs both of us." "I have known that for weeks now. I just did not let myself think about what it meant." "You are sure?" Samuel asked, his hands framing her face. "Because once we do this, once we make it real, there is no going back. The town already talks. If we are together, really together, it will be worse." "Let them talk," Katherine said. "I am tired of living my life according to what other people think I should do. My father taught me to be brave, to go after what I want, and I want this. I want you." Samuel kissed her again, and Katherine felt the last of her defenses crumble. For the first time since her father died, she did not feel alone. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the church in Weaverville. Katherine wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her slimmer frame, and Samuel wore his only suit, carefully brushed and pressed. The church was not full. Most of the townspeople stayed away, their disapproval evident in their absence. But the few who came were the ones who mattered. Mr. Jameson from the general store, who had always treated Katherine fairly. Doc Hendricks, who had cared for her father in his final days. Mrs. Chen, who ran the boarding house and had defended Katherine more than once against vicious gossip. "Do you, Katherine Rose Kennedy, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the minister asked. "I do," Katherine said clearly, her eyes on Samuel's face. "And do you, Samuel James Quinton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Samuel said, and the smile he gave Katherine was like the sun coming out. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Samuel pulled Katherine close and kissed her soundly, and the small congregation applauded. When they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, Katherine held her head high. She did not care that most of the pews were empty. She had married a good man who saw her for who she truly was, and that was worth more than 1,000 approving strangers. The reception was held at the ranch, a simple affair with food prepared by Mrs. Chen and music provided by Mr. Jameson's brother, who played a mean fiddle. They danced under the stars, and Katherine laughed more than she had in years. "Happy?" Samuel asked, holding her close as they swayed to the music. "Happier than I have been in a long time," Katherine said honestly. "Thank you for seeing me, for not trying to change me." "I would not change a single thing about you," Samuel said. "You are perfect exactly as you are." That night, in the house that had been so empty and lonely, Katherine lay in her husband's arms and felt peace settle over her. The future was still uncertain. The ranch still required endless work. The town still whispered, but none of it seemed insurmountable anymore. She had Samuel, and together they could face anything. The fall cattle sale came, and it was better than Katherine had dared hope. The herd had thrived under their joint care, and the buyers were impressed by the quality of the stock. When the final tally was done, there was not only enough to pay the ranch's expenses and give Samuel the back wages he was owed, but a small profit besides. "We did it," Katherine said that night, looking at the figures in the ledger. "We actually did it." "You did it," Samuel said. "This was your ranch, your vision. I just helped." "We did it together," Katherine corrected. "And we are going to keep doing it together. This is not just my ranch anymore. It is ours." Samuel looked at her, his gray eyes soft. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything," Katherine said. "We are partners, Samuel, in everything." Winter came, and it was hard, as winters in the mountains always were. Snow piled high, and there were days when they could barely leave the house. But there was wood for the fire and food in the pantry and each other to keep warm. Samuel taught Katherine how to play poker, and she taught him the complicated card game her father had learned from a Chinese railroad worker. They read books aloud to each other, discussed plans for the spring, and made love with the slow, thorough passion of people who had all the time in the world. "I have been thinking," Samuel said one evening as they sat by the fire, "about expanding the herd. We could use the profit from this year to buy more cattle, maybe some breeding stock, build the ranch up bigger." "That is a good idea," Katherine said. "We would need to hire another hand or two, though. We are at capacity with just the two of us." "I know a couple of men," Samuel said. "Good workers, reliable. They have been looking for steady work. I could write to them, see if they are interested." "Do it," Katherine said. "Let's build something real here, something that will last." Spring came in a rush of green and gold, and with it came change. 2 new ranch hands arrived, young men named Tom and Eddie who treated Katherine with respect and worked hard. The herd expanded. New fences went up. The ranch that had been struggling began to thrive. And then, in the early summer heat of 1879, Katherine realized she was pregnant. She told Samuel in the barn, unable to wait until they were back in the house. He had been checking on a mare that was due to foal soon, and Katherine walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Samuel," she said, "I am going to have a baby." He went very still, and for a moment Katherine's heart clenched. Then he turned around, his face transformed with joy. "You are sure?" "I am sure," Katherine said. "Doc Hendricks confirmed it this morning. Late winter, probably February." Samuel laughed and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her protests. "A baby," he said. "Katherine, we are going to have a baby. You are happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Samuel said. He set her down carefully, his hands gentle on her waist. "Are you happy?" "Terrified," Katherine admitted. "But yes, so happy I could burst with it." The pregnancy progressed, and Katherine stubbornly refused to slow down. Samuel worried, hovering over her like a mother hen, but she would not be coddled. "I am pregnant, not dying," she said, exasperated, when he tried to take a feed bag from her for the 3rd time that day. "You are carrying precious cargo," Samuel said. "Let me do the heavy lifting." "I have been doing heavy lifting my whole life," Katherine said. "A baby is not going to change that." But she compromised, accepting help when the tasks were truly beyond her growing bulk, and focusing more on the administrative side of the ranch as her body changed. She kept the books, planned the spring planting, and negotiated with buyers. Samuel and the hands did the physical labor, and slowly Katherine learned that accepting help was not the same as admitting weakness. The town's attitude toward them had shifted too. The marriage had made things respectable in the eyes of most people, and Katherine's pregnancy further legitimized their union. Women who had shunned her began nodding in greeting. Margaret Whitmore still pursed her lips disapprovingly whenever she saw Katherine, but even she kept her worst gossip to herself. "It is amazing what a wedding ring will do," Katherine said dryly one day after a shopping trip to town. "People are stupid," Samuel said. "You were doing the same work before we married, working just as hard, being just as capable, but now they approve because you have a husband." "At least they approve," Katherine said. "I will take it, even if the reasoning is backwards." The baby came on a cold February morning in 1880, arriving 3 weeks early after a labor that lasted almost 20 hours. Doc Hendricks attended, along with Mrs. Chen, who had experience with births. Samuel paced in the front room wearing a path in the floorboards until finally the sound of a baby's cry split the air. Doc Hendricks emerged smiling. "You have a son," he said, "and your wife is fine. Tired, but fine. You can go in now. Samuel rushed into the bedroom to find Katherine propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. She looked up as he entered, and her smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Meet your son," she said softly. Samuel sat on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had a shock of dark hair and a scrunched-up face that looked distinctly annoyed at being born. Samuel felt his heart expand in his chest, felt tears prick his eyes. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered. "You are perfect. I cannot believe we made this." "What should we call him?" Katherine asked. They had discussed names for weeks, unable to agree, but looking at his son's face, Samuel knew immediately. "Robert," he said, "after your father." Katherine's eyes filled with tears. "Really, he should have a strong name," Samuel said. "A name that means something. Your father built this ranch. It is only right that his grandson carries his name forward." "Robert James Quinton," Katherine said, testing it out. "I like it." The baby made a small sound, and Katherine moved him to her breast to nurse. Samuel watched in awe, still overwhelmed by the reality of it. He was a father. He had a wife he loved beyond measure, a ranch that was prospering, and now a son. A year and a half ago he had been drifting, alone, with nothing to his name but a horse and a saddle, and now he had everything. "Thank you," he said to Katherine, his voice rough with emotion. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a drifter with nothing to offer," Samuel said. "For being brave enough to love me. For giving me this family." "You had more to offer than you thought," Katherine said. "You gave me hope when I was drowning. You saw me as an equal when everyone else saw me as a tragedy. You loved me for being strong, not despite it." She reached out with her free hand and took his. "We saved each other, Samuel. That is what love is supposed to do." The years that followed were full and good. The ranch continued to grow, becoming one of the most successful in the area. They hired more hands, expanded into horse breeding, and built a reputation for quality stock and fair dealing. Robert grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's determination and his father's steady nature. When Robert was 3, Katherine became pregnant again. This time she was more careful, having learned her limits. The baby, a girl they named Sarah, arrived without complications in the spring of 1883. She had Samuel's gray eyes and Katherine's dark hair, and she captured her father's heart completely. "You were right," Samuel said, holding his daughter while Katherine rested. "I did need a daughter to balance out Robert's wildness." "She will probably be just as wild," Katherine said, laughing. "Look at her mother." Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, of cattle drives in the fall and new calves in the spring, of school lessons at the kitchen table and bedtime stories by the fire. Robert learned to ride almost before he could walk, and Sarah was not far behind him. They grew up understanding that the ranch was a partnership, that their mother was just as capable as their father, and that honest work was nothing to be ashamed of. The town's attitude had fully shifted by then. Katherine and Samuel were respected members of the community, their success undeniable. Even Margaret Whitmore had softened, though she would never admit she had been wrong. Young women began to look at Katherine differently, seeing possibility instead of scandal. She was living proof that there was more than one way to be a woman, more than one path to happiness. One evening, when Robert was 10 and Sarah was 7, the family sat on the porch watching the sunset, just as Katherine and Samuel had done so many years ago. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and peaceful. "Papa," Robert said, "tell us again about how you met Mama." It was a story they had heard 100 times, but they never tired of it. Samuel smiled and pulled Katherine close. "I was riding through looking for work," he said, "and I heard about a ranch that needed a hand. When I got there, I found the toughest, most stubborn, most beautiful woman I had ever seen, trying to do the work of 3 men all by herself. And Mama hired you even though you were a stranger, Sarah chimed in, knowing the story by heart. She did, Samuel said. Best decision I ever made coming to this ranch. Second best decision was convincing your mother to marry me. You did not have to convince me, Katherine said. I knew what I wanted. Mama is always sure about things, Robert said wisely. That she is, Samuel agreed. He looked at his wife, his partner, the woman who had given him not just a home but a purpose. Your mother taught me that strength comes in many forms, that determination and heart matter more than what other people think. That love means seeing someone for who they truly are and celebrating it, not trying to change them. You taught me that I did not have to do everything alone, Katherine said softly. That asking for help is not weakness. That being strong does not mean being isolated. The children groaned at the mushiness, but they were smiling. They had grown up seeing their parents love every day in the way they worked together, supported each other, made each other laugh. It was the foundation their whole world was built on. As the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Katherine leaned her head on Samuel's shoulder and felt the deep contentment of a life well lived. The girl who had been shamed for working like a man had found a man who loved her for her strength, not despite it. Together they had built something lasting, something real. The ranch would pass to their children one day, and to their children's children. But it would always carry the legacy of 2 people who refused to let the world's expectations define them, who chose love and partnership over convention, who proved that true strength lies not in conforming to what others want you to be, but in having the courage to be exactly who you are. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Katherine thought of her father and hoped he could see what she had built on the foundation he laid. The ranch still stood, stronger than ever. His legacy lived on, not just in the land and the cattle, but in the values he instilled. The belief that work was noble, that capability mattered more than gender, that love and respect were the true measures of a person's worth. "What are you thinking about?" Samuel asked softly. "How lucky I am," Katherine said. "How impossibly, ridiculously lucky." "We are both lucky," Samuel said. "We found each other. That is rarer than gold." Years continued to pass in contentment. Robert grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility around the ranch. Sarah proved to be a natural with horses, developing a training program that gained recognition throughout California. They both married eventually, bringing their spouses to live on the ranch, which expanded to accommodate the growing family. Katherine and Samuel grew old together, their hair turning silver, their faces weathering like the mountains around them. But their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming as much a part of them as breathing. On their 30th wedding anniversary, in the summer of 1909, their children and grandchildren threw them a party. The ranch was full of people, music, and laughter. As Katherine and Samuel danced under the same stars they had danced under on their wedding night, surrounded by the family and legacy they had built together, Katherine felt a profound sense of peace. "You remember what you said to me that day?" Katherine asked. "After I came back from town angry about the gossip." "I said a lot of things," Samuel said, smiling. "You said I was stronger than most men you had ever known," Katherine said. "It was the first time anyone had acknowledged what I was trying to do. The first time anyone saw my work as strength instead of stubbornness or desperation." "It was the truth," Samuel said. "Still is. You have always been the strongest person I know." "We have been strong together," Katherine corrected. "That is the secret, I think. Not being strong alone, but finding someone who makes you stronger. Someone who sees your strength and celebrates it instead of fearing it." "Then I guess we both got lucky," Samuel said, pulling her close. As they danced, Katherine looked around at everything they had built. The ranch that had nearly broken her was now thriving, passed into capable hands. Their children and grandchildren were happy, healthy, carrying forward the values she and Samuel had instilled. The town that had once shamed her for working like a man now told her story with pride, pointing her out to young women as an example of what determination could achieve. But more than any of that, she had love. True, deep, abiding love with a man who had seen her at her lowest and said not that she should give up, but that she was strong enough to keep going. A man who had worked beside her, supported her, and built a life with her that was richer than anything she could have imagined alone. The music swelled, and their grandchildren joined them on the makeshift dance floor. Robert swung his daughter around while Sarah laughed with her sons. The ranch was full of life and joy, exactly as it should be. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Katherine and Samuel found themselves back on the porch, watching the sunset just as they had done countless times before. Samuel's arm was around her shoulders, and Katherine leaned into his warmth, feeling blessed beyond measure. "Have I told you today that I love you?" Samuel asked. "Only twice," Katherine said, smiling. "You are slacking." "I love you," Samuel said, kissing her temple. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you trying to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Katherine said. "Thank you for seeing me, for never asking me to be anything other than what I am, for building this beautiful life with me." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of fire and the first stars began to appear. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. A horse whinnied in the barn. The sounds of the ranch settling in for the night were as familiar as their own heartbeats. Katherine thought about the girl she had been, bleeding and desperate, hauling fence posts alone while the town whispered about her shame. She thought about the moment Samuel rode up that dusty road, offering help without judgment. She thought about every moment since, the struggles and triumphs, the fear and joy, all the pieces that had come together to create this life. She had been shamed for working like a man, for refusing to fit into the narrow box society had created for her. But that shame had led her to Samuel, who saw her strength and loved her for it, who stood beside her and told her she was capable when everyone else told her to give up, who built a partnership based on respect and equality long before such things were fashionable. And now, at the end of it all, she could look back and see that every hardship had been worth it. Every moment of doubt, every whispered insult, every back-breaking day of work had led her here, to this porch, this man, this life. "What are you smiling about?" Samuel asked. "Everything," Katherine said simply. "Absolutely everything." They stayed there as the stars came out in full force, blazing across the night sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet. The ranch was quiet now, settled and peaceful. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, new joys. But tonight was for gratitude, for love, for the profound satisfaction of a life lived on their own terms. Katherine had been shamed for her strength, but she had found a man who celebrated it. Together they had built not just a ranch, but a legacy of love, respect, and partnership that would endure long after they were gone. Their story would be told to grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a reminder that true love sees strength as beautiful, that partnership means lifting each other up, and that the opinions of small-minded people matter far less than staying true to yourself. As the night deepened and the air grew cool, Samuel stood and offered Katherine his hand. "Come on," he said. "Let's go inside." Katherine took his hand, the same hand he had offered her 30 years ago, and let him pull her to her feet. They walked into the house together, Their steps matched after decades of walking side by side. The door closed behind them, and the ranch settled into silence under the watching stars. The story that began with shame and struggle had become a testament to love's transforming power. Katherine Kennedy, the woman who had been mocked for working like a man, had found Samuel Quinton, the cowboy who told her she was stronger than most men he had ever known. Together they proved that strength recognized and celebrated is more powerful than strength denied. They built a life that honored both their capabilities, a partnership that made them better than they could have been alone. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the opinions of others, not society's expectations, but two people who saw each other truly and chose to build something beautiful together. The ranch would stand for generations, a monument not just to their hard work, but to their unwavering love. A love that began with honest words and respect, that grew through shared struggle and triumph, and that endured through all the years of their lives. That was their legacy. That was their truth, and it was more than enough.